Alrighty. Well, this is Monday. I had last night off because this is Martin Luther King Day, which I have to laugh, not because it's Martin Luther King Day, but up until last year when all this horse shit started, we never got this day off. And last year when this horse shit all started, all of a sudden it became important to have this day off, which I'm not saying that it's wrong. He was a really good man and he had a lot of good ideas, and it's really bad the way that his life had to end, and definitely not the way anybody should have to go out. And I think that he could have done a lot more good in this world if he would have been given the chance. But my God, if that poor soul would have seen what his movements turned into today, he would shit a brick and he'd probably shoot himself. But anyway, I digress. Had the day off, so I took the head down to the machine shop today. First thing this morning, before I took it down there, I called Corvs and got a water pump and a thermostat coming and asked them what the deal was with the valve springs. And apparently there was an update to the update. When they first came out with the rotators, they went to a shorter spring on the rotators and kept the long spring on the standard valves. And then at some point, somebody in the parts department must have decided, hey, this is kind of stupid to have to stock two spring sizes. So they went to the same size spring on all 8 valves and just ran more spring tension on the exhaust valves. So I was able to take the head, the valves, the springs, the keepers, the whole shebang down there. And when I get it back, it's going to be an assembled head. All I got to do is slap it on there. So that worked out pretty good. And then I got back and spent about the last hour tracking this guy down because I really like this gasket. Luckily, being a steel gasket, it still had the stamping, part number stamping and all that stuff in it, like there, this side down. And this, I can't actually make out what it is. It's a VIC-2- something OLD. So no clue what that means because I don't know. But the important part was this right here. It's a Victor gasket, which now it's Victor Rhines, which is a division of Dana Spicer. And it's a part number 1876. And I looked all over. I got on the Dana website, got on their Victor page, typed in that part number, didn't come up. Tried to do their advanced search. Basically their website sucks. And unfortunate, I was trying to find a way to just contact them directly and say, hey, is this gasket still a production part, or is it a discontinued part number and there's no sense in looking? But there's no way to contact, or they don't have a customer service department or anything, and if they do, they make it a real bitch to find the contact information. So I called Advanced Auto Parts because Advance and AutoZone are 2 of the Victor distributors they list on their website. Well, I wasn't going to screw with AutoZone because AutoZone is terrible. At least ours is. Like, you don't go to our AutoZone unless you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, have no other place to turn. So I called Advance and actually got a decent guy, and he spent some time looking, and it does still show up in the system. They could fill the order, but I don't know if it's due to COVID or whatever, it was going to take him forever to get it. So he actually found another source for me, and he sent me there. And found 2 places that have them. One was eBay, the other was Amazon. But both eBay and Amazon, the description is just Victor Rhines 1876 gasket with a picture from what would be this side, and it just looks like a silver gasket, head gasket. I mean, the picture is very clear. It is this head gasket. The profile's right. All the holes are in the same spot. It is that gasket. But it's so fuzzy and such a shitty picture, you can't tell if it's a steel gasket or if it's just a fiber gasket, which is what I got in my kit over there. So I got an email out to the Amazon place to see if it is a, what Victor calls these is a MLS, multi-layer steel gasket, because it's got a steel, at least one steel layer. The gasket's dirty, but there's at least one steel layer. This side is copper for sealing purposes, and then it's got copper rings on all the water jacket holes. I thought it had copper fire rings, but it actually doesn't. There's no fire ring there at all, which I found kind of odd. Maybe fire rings are only a diesel thing, but I could have swore the head gasket we put in my 1600 had fire rings. But either way, I like this gasket a lot more than this gasket, just because I don't like the fact that it just seems wrong having a fiber gasket without fire rings around the pistons. But that being said, it's also kind of weird that these are flat top sleeves and there's no landing there to back up a fire ring. So I don't know. That being said, it's just a little four banger gas that doesn't really run that high of a compression, and is what it is. But either way, my plan, the fiber gasket for right now is going to go on it either way, because obviously hopefully next year is my plan, pull this thing down all the way, get a block, then do the bottom end completely, grind the crank, put new bearings in it, piston sleeves, rings, whole 9 yards, cam bearings, check the timing gears, all that fancy stuff, so that this thing has a 100% completely fresh motor in it, because I think she's earned it. But since the head's coming off, I don't want to destroy, if I manage to hunt one of these down, I don't want to destroy a good gasket. So we'll throw that fiber gasket in there, run it for this year, hopefully find a steel head gasket, and then when I do it next year, do the whole thing, it'll go together with one of those head gaskets. So long way around to saying I'm looking for a steel head gasket for it. But anyway, I think right now what I'm gonna do, at least today, is I might actually start with pulling the water pump off, because it's gonna make cleaning the black deck up a little nicer, not having that there in the way. So I might just pull the water pump off and get it out the way. But either way, my goal for today is to get the black deck cleaned up, get all the ports cleaned out, run a ridge reamer on the top of the sleeves here, get those cleaned up, and see where we're at for time after that. So first things first, I guess I kind of want to get the water pump pulled off, since I got a new one on the way. Well, I got the water pump off. Wasn't that big of a deal. Wasn't really all that stuck. And this right here tells you how backwards we've gone in steel making technology. Explain to me how a 70-year-old bolt that's rusted that bad can come out of there with no muss, no fuss, with a regular 3/8 ratchet. Not snap off, not gall the threads, nothing. Just spin right out of the hole. You try to do that with a zinc-plated bolt made today, you'd snap that thing in the block and you'd be sitting there fighting for an hour to get it out. Thank you, China Steel. But anyway, I think we're going to be wise to replace this, because I got the bolts out, hadn't touched any antifreeze, and my hand smelled like antifreeze. And the fact that there's some gunk up in there, I'm betting that this thing has been weeping for a while and it just hasn't gone all the way yet. So I think we're dodging a bullet here by replacing that thing early. But anyhow, guess now gotta get that gasket scraped off. And I'm actually kind of surprised the block's as clean as it is. I was expecting more rust. But yeah, like I say, anyhow, get that gasket cleaned off, get that mating surface cleaned up, kind of clean some of the grease and shit up down here. Wire wheel the block deck, get all the crap off of it. And then we will run ridge reamer down the piston bores. All right, ready to wire, well, I was going to wire wheel this, but looking at it, that stuff's gummy enough that a wire wheel just ain't going to take it off. So normally I would, in that situation, I'd use a Scotch-Brite pad on the 3-inch grinder, but that's the last one we got and it's shot. So, next best thing, use a dull sanding wheel. By dull, I mean there ain't hardly shit for grit left on there. Basically, the whole goal is to not actually remove any material other than the gunk from the top of the block. So you don't want to use anything that's actually going to cut. Hence the dull wheel instead of a sharp one. So, damn it. Well, if it wasn't for the 3 damn cracks in the block, that block deck would actually look pretty dang good, all things considered, for its age. You can still see the machine marks in it. But the funny part is, these sleeves have been out at some point. They got that one pin pricked 1, 2, 3, and 4. So at some point the sleeves have been out of this thing and they put the old sleeves back in it, which was probably either a case of it was in a period of time where you couldn't get engine parts for these things, which there was a time, or they were cheap asses, or they pulled brand new sleeves out for some reason and put them back in. Lord only knows. Like I say, if only she could talk. But next step gonna be to hit this thing with a ridge reamer and get the top of them sleeves cleaned up a little bit. So this is a ridge reamer, and what it is kind of like a tripod. It's got 2 guides. Actually, it's got, I guess, technically 3 guides, but the 3rd guide contains a carbide cutter. And all you do is it sets down and rides the top of the sleeve like so, and that cutter just takes the ridge out, hence ridge reamer. And you draw it up. You turn that bolt and it draws a wedge up and expands it like an exhaust pipe expander till it fits the hole. So you just put a little bit of tension on it, put a wrench on the big hex, spin it, put a little bit more tension on it. It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a ridge reamer. So you take your piston, get it on bottom dead center, gives you enough room to work. And then before you spin the motor over, you take a vacuum and you vac the hole out, anything that fell down in there. So anyway, that's the next step. And you don't need to go reefing on this. Less is more. Basically what you're trying to accomplish to the best of your ability is to just make the top of that sleeve match the rest of it. And when you're done, that's what you end up with. Now apparently these sleeves are wore to a little bit of an oval. I got her pretty good all the way around to right in this area right here, and there's still a little bit of a lip, but I don't really want to take any more. It's making me kind of nervous. So it's 10 times better than what it was. But like I say, it ain't got to be perfect, because hopefully next year this is all going to be new anyhow. But we're just trying to do the best with what we got. So at least make her happy for another year. So that's 1 hole down, 3 more to go. I had to take quite a bit of meat out of them things to get them cleaned up halfway decent. They all aren't perfect, but like I say, we're going to be replacing all this crap next year anyway, so it ain't got to be perfect, it's just got to be better. But anyway, I'd really wish I could hone those a little bit and take some of the chowder marks out from the cutter, but our cylinder hone, I don't like how far down it goes into the sleeve to where it actually stays square. So I think what I might do, since I'm gonna buy a new fan belt, a new generator belt for this thing, and I got to get the tubing to remake the oil line for the rocker arm assembly. So I think when I go do that, I'm gonna get a ball hone that I can just stick in there yay far enough to get down to where I ground that ridge off and kind of scuff it up a little bit, smooth it out. But outside of that, I think the last thing I'm going to do today while I'm working on the block is run a tap down through all the head bolt holes and clean them up, because it's very, very important when you go to torque your head down to make sure that the threads are clean, because if the threads are dirty, that affects how the bolt torques up. So you don't want any shit in your holes. But anyhow, I'm gonna get that done and probably call her a day and go home and get a nap before I gotta leave for work. So we will catch you guys probably tomorrow. I might clean some more parts up. For all intents and purposes, the block is done. I'm just waiting on a water pump and the head to come back. So we will see where the next day takes us. All right. Well, got the new water pump on. I'm waiting on belts. They're going to be here tomorrow. They had to order them. I got a ball hone and just really quick scuffed up the very top inch of the piston here where that ridge was, just to kind of smooth out some of the tool marks from that ridge reamer. I think we need to get a new cutter for that thing. It's the finish it left leaves a little bit to be desired. But it's kind of funny, I was thumbing through the manual the other day, or yesterday, whenever the heck it was. I was thumbing through the manual to find the head bolt torque and the torque pattern, and they showed running a ridge reamer in the sleeve to take the ridge out, and it's the exact same Amco ridge reamer we got. I thought that was kind of funny. What else? I got the call from the machine shop today. My head's done, so I'm gonna go pick that up tomorrow afternoon. Obviously got to get belts tomorrow afternoon. There was one other thing I thought I had to get. What else did I have to get? Oh, I thought I was gonna have to get copper coat, but we got enough to do this head gasket. So, yeah, I got a new piece of tubing to remake this oil line for the rocker arms. Rocker arm assembly's cleaned up, tappet covers cleaned up, gasket scraped off. I got the rocker arm studs cleaned up, and I wire brushed the threads, for the manifold studs. Took the manifold, took our sander, got all the carbon and shit cleaned off the flanges, and then we got a 4-inch, a 2x4 honing stone. I ran that over the flanges to make sure they were all flat. They don't got to be perfectly flat, because the manifold gaskets on this style of engine, they're a donut with like a copper O-ring in them, and that's a crush ring to take up, so it ain't got to be perfectly flat. It's nice if it's perfectly flat, but it's not critical. Then I took the stone and I stoned the flange for the carburetor. Cleaned up the thermostat neck, got a new thermostat. I was a little scared when this thing showed up yesterday, because UPS had been less than gentle with the box, and there was a hole in it, and the water pump was like sticking out of it that far, and everything's rattling around in there, and the thermostat came out of the box in 3 pieces. Well, luckily it's supposed to be in 3 pieces, and you got to assemble it. Basically, this brass bell just snaps onto the actual thermostat itself, and then the gasket's not attached. It's just, it goes on there. So that's ready. The one thing I forgot to do that I'm gonna have to do when I get the head back tomorrow is my dumbass forgot to take the valve stem seals. So I'm gonna have to take the head back apart real quick and put those in tomorrow. Gonna have to figure out how to do it, because according to the manual, the valve stem seal will go inside of the intake spring retainers. So that's gonna be interesting figuring that one out. So yeah, the other thing I might look at is the rotators. I might pull one of them apart and see, because they weren't really working right when I took them. But I don't think you can get parts for them anymore. I asked about them, and it sounds like if the rotator, it sounds like if I need rotators, I basically got to go find a parts tractor and get some rotators off of it. Which, if that's the case and there's something wrong with a major, I will just put the head back on and we'll run it, and then when I do the bottom end, I will have found a set of good rotators to put on it and reassemble the head at a later date. As it was running, there's nothing wrong with them. It's just they're supposed to all rotate one direction, and they might just kind of do their own thing, but it's nothing that's going to hurt the tractor. They ran them for years with no rotators whatsoever. It was just a solid valve spring retainer, so no big deal there. But anyway, as far as the old water pump goes, I'm going to hang on to it because I don't think there's really anything wrong with it other than the seal's out. So I'm going to see what the availability is of a rebuild kit and probably rebuild that water pump and throw it on the shelf to have as a spare. I struck out on a new head gasket, this style anyhow. The 2 places I found that carry a Victor gasket with that part number, apparently one would think that if Victor quit making this gasket, they would have discontinued that part number and gave the new gasket a new part number. Well, that 1876 part number is still a good gasket, but it's just a fiber gasket like the one I got. I can't find this steel gasket anywhere, so might stay on the hunt for a new old stock one on eBay or something over the summer, and that way when we go to do this right, we can use that style gasket, because I really like that gasket. But if not, I guess we're stuck with a fiber one. They used them for years, so yeah, I think that's about it, really. The other thing I'm gonna do before we fire this thing up, I got oil. We'll get the head back on, get it all back together, remove any chance of shit falling down through the oil return holes or anything like that. And before I fire it up, I'll drop the oil and change it. So we're starting this thing on fresh oil to make sure there's no shit in the pan from working on the head. Got the head bolts all cleaned up. Wire brush the threads on those. Push rods, clean those up. They all look fine. One of them, that guy, number 1, had been rubbing on something, but I couldn't see anything down the bore. Number 1 was also, it had a bunch of, there was rusty up here, like wet, nasty rust up here, and I don't fully understand that either, because I don't know. But I couldn't see any signs of any water leak, so who knows. But anyway, everything's clean, really. I need to get my head back and get them belts, and with any luck, by tomorrow night, at least the head will be back on it. Saturday at the latest, so Trying to think if I need to talk about anything before I end this video, because the next one is going to be in part 3. Wrapped up the head gasket, water pump, everything's clean. I think that pretty much covers everything relevant to this part of the build, so I guess that does it for this one, and we will catch you guys on the next one.